So today we're going to see how to get bigger arcs with the help of resonance. So the distance between the electrodes is 9.7 millimeters. It's around 9.7 millimeters. And the voltage I'm using is 24 volts. It takes around 5.5 amps. I'm driving the flyback transformer with the help of H bridge, and I'm driving it at around 63 kilohertz. I'm going to turn on it now. So this is without resonance. So if I increase the distance from here to here, the arc will not form. So I have added these three capacitors. Each of them is around 560 nanofarads. So I've checked it with the LCR meter. Three of them parallel comes around to 1700 nanofarads. And the distance between electrodes is now 18.7 millimeters. I'll turn it on the power supply. I have increased the distance even further, and it's around 26.7 millimeters. I'm going to turn on the power supply. Make sure you guys use good quality capacitors. I'm using CBB capacitors. These are polyester capacitors, and these are not very good for this purpose. They get quite hot. Try to use MKPH capacitors. The reason I'm conducting this experiment is because I want to get the biggest possible arc, because I'm going to test the epoxy with the fillers and other stuff in it. So I'm going to test how much voltage it takes to break down the epoxy. Here I'm just using a clear epoxy, and this is a DIY flyback, around 650 turns and 5 turns for the primary. Here is my H bridge, 2 IGBTs in parallel for each side, and here's the inverter. On this circuit I usually use for my solid state Tesla coils or DRS-STCs. You can adjust the flyback driving frequency from here. I'm using around 63 kilohertz. The ESP32 is not doing really anything in this circuit, neither is this chip, which is a flip-flop. This one is a 74HC14N, which is a inverting Schmitt trigger. So before I was using 24 volts DC. The problem with using DC voltage is that the power draw is very huge. After adding the capacitors, I was drawing about 9.1 amps. Now what we're gonna do is use the AC mains from the house, rectify it, but we're not gonna put any capacitors on the output of the rectifier, so it's gonna look like this. And the flyback transformer is gonna write this AC mains. I'm using the variac to control the AC voltage. I'm gonna use about 60 volts. The distance between the electrodes is around 46.2 millimeters. Watch the capacitors. And I think this should be enough to test the epoxy with added fillers in it, and we're gonna test if those added fillers improve the dielectric strength of the epoxy.